Have you ever stared at one of those huge multi-part exam questions, the ones with all the graphs and data and just completely frozen? You know the biology, but what does a perfect maximum mark answer actually sound like to an examiner? Well, today we are cracking that exact code. We're going to deconstruct a real GCSE biology question, piece by piece, to show you the precise language and thinking that gets you those top marks. Let's get right into it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll break down the question itself to see what they're really after. Then we'll dive into the data on carbon cycles and ecosystems. After that, we'll switch gears to analyze how a rainforest bounces back after being cleared and what that means for the animals living there. And to wrap it all up, we'll have a little exam masterclass, giving you a solid strategy for any data question that comes your way.
All right, let's start by deconstructing the question. At its core, question 6 is all about a huge, real-world topic. What happens to our planet's ecosystems when we chop down forests for farming? See, the exam isn't just testing random facts. It's using data to see if you can connect some really important biological ideas.
And here's our first clue. This graph shows how carbon dioxide levels change in a tropical rainforest over a single 24-hour period. Now, the first rule for any data question is simple. Read the axes. On the bottom, we've got the time of day, and on the side, we have the CO2 concentration. You can almost see the forest breathing in and out.
Okay, time to put that graph to work. This first chunk of the question is all about the carbon cycle. It's really testing if we understand just how much these huge forests affect the very air we all breathe.
So the question asks us to explain what's happening in two different time slots. First, between midnight and 6 a.m., when the CO2 level is creeping up. And second, from 8 in the morning till noon, when it suddenly takes a nosedive. What is the forest actually doing at these different times?
And here is the exact wording from the mark scheme that gets you full marks. For that first part, you get a point for saying it's dark, so only respiration is happening. The second point comes from clearly stating that respiration produces carbon dioxide. Easy enough. For the second part, the key phrase is that the rate of photosynthesis is faster than the rate of respiration. This creates a net uptake of CO2, and that's the big idea that lands you the final mark. Okay, now they throw a little curveball at us. On the left, we've got our rainforest data, but on the right, we have the same 24-hour cycle for a field of maize. The biggest thing to spot here is the difference in that midday dip. See how the drop in CO2 is way less dramatic for the maize? That little visual clue is going to be super important for the next question. This is such a classic exam question. They're asking for the long-term impact. We're not just thinking about one day anymore. We have to think about what happens over a whole year if you swap a rainforest for a cornfield. To nail this, you've got to combine what the graphs show with your general biology knowledge. And here are the 2 points you need for the full 2 marks. The absolute key here is that your answer has to be comparative. First, maize is a crop, right? It only grows for maybe 6 months of the year, while that rainforest is sucking up CO2 all year round. Second, even on a good day, the graphs show us the maize field just takes in less CO2 than the rainforest. You put those 2 facts together, and that's why you get an overall increase in CO2 in the atmosphere. All right, time for a change of scenery. The question now shifts from the carbon cycle over to biodiversity. We're going to look at what happens when a section of rainforest is cleared out and then just left to grow back on its own. Let's have a look at the data. So what we have here is a scatter graph showing us how a forest regenerates. First things first, check the axes. The bottom axis is time, showing the number of years since the area was cleared, all the way up to 100 years. The side axis shows the percentage of tree species found compared to a totally untouched forest nearby. Each one of those little circles is a different study area, and that line running through them shows the general trend. Now, this is a really clever question. It's not about the biology, but about good scientific method. Why use percentages? Why not just count the number of tree species they found in each spot and plot that? The clue is all about making a fair comparison. You know, in science, percentages are like this amazing tool we use to standardize things. They let us make a fair comparison between different groups or different places, especially when those places might have started out with different sizes or conditions. It just creates a level playing field for the data. And there's the perfect 2-mark answer. The first mark is for just saying it allows for comparison. But the second, more detailed mark comes from explaining why you need to do that. Because the different patches of forest might have had different numbers of species to begin with.
Using a percentage just smooths out that starting difference. Okay, now it's your turn to be the scientist. Take a really close look at that graph. I mean, we can all see that the number of species generally goes up over 100 years, right? But what's another story that this data is telling you? What other conclusion can you draw?
And would you look at that? There are so many possible correct answers. You only needed one of them to get the mark. You could have talked about the rate of recovery, how it was really fast at the beginning and then slowed down. Or you could have pointed out that amazing detail that after about 50 years, the new areas often had even more species than the original forest. Or you could have just talked about how spread out the dots are, showing there was a lot of variation from place to place. Any of those would have been a perfect answer.
We are on the home stretch now. For this last part of the question, we need to connect the dots. So we figured out that the number of tree species recovers over time. Now we need to explain why that is so important for all the animals that live in that forest.
So the question is simple, but it's a really deep one in ecology. Why does having more types of trees lead to having more types of animals? It's all about that fundamental link between the producers, the plants, and all the consumers that rely on them. And the answer really boils down to two simple, crucial things. First, more types of trees means more different types of food, different leaves, fruits, nuts, you name it. And second, it means more different types of habitats and shelter. Basically, more places for animals to live, hide from predators, and build nests. Two clear, simple points for 2 marks. Job done. Okay, deep breath. We have officially worked through every single part of question 6. But let's zoom out for a second. What are the big picture skills we can take away here? Because this whole exercise was about more than just carbon cycles and biodiversity. It was a masterclass in how to tackle exam questions. For any question you get with a graph or a table of data, just remember these 3 steps. Step 1, and I can't say this enough, read the axes labels first. It tells you what you're actually looking at. Step 2, before you get lost in the details, just find the overall pattern. Is the line going up, down, flattening out? And step 3, if the question asks you to compare 2 things, your answer must use comparative words. Faster, slower, more than, less than. So what's an examiner really looking for when they're marking your paper? Think of it like a secret checklist. They want to see precision, using the right scientific terms like respiration. They want to see direct comparison when you're asked for it. They want to know you get bigger ideas, like net change. And finally, they want to see that you can link different topics together, just like we connected the trees to the animals. And really, that's the main takeaway from all of this. Getting those top marks in an exam isn't just about knowing the facts. It's a communication skill. It's about being able to explain what you know clearly and precisely, using the evidence that's sitting right there in front of you. So there you have it. We've cracked the code for question 6 and seen exactly what a perfect answer looks like from start to finish. The question is, what tricky exam question should we break down together next time? Let us know what you think.